Hello, hello, my chunkies. It's me. It's Councillor James, your friendly local community councillor up here in sunny North Wales in lovely Rill, the place to be usually. And as you'll see from the title on today's vlog, I'm returning to universal credit and benefits generally, really, which I thought was important to do. Um, because it's important where I am, it's important to my residents here, it's important to many, many families, many, many individuals. Unfortunately, increasingly, more and more people, more and more families, especially coming up to Christmas, because of the fallout from all the lockdowns, people losing their businesses, people losing work, all the horrible stuff, unfortunately, that's happening economically as a consequence of 9 months of COVID and the measures. So yes, primarily going to be talking about universal credit. A lot of this is going to be for people who've never claimed before, who've never claimed benefits before, benefits, never claimed universal credit tax before, don't know how to go about it. What else can you get generally if you're claiming universal credit? So it's not going to be massively in depth. Actually, you'd be here for about 6 months. I mean, it's a very complicated area, welfare and benefits, as I know for myself. When I was training for more than a year as a CAB advisor here in Sunny Rill some years ago. So my first bit of advice would be, and this would always stand, is that wherever you are in the country, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, you're probably going to have something like a Citizens Advice Bureau, welfare advice. Usually it's a charity. You might have a welfare advice or rights, if you're lucky, officer or unit with your local authority, with your council. More and more those have been gotten rid of, because councils have known they can or thought they can rely on the third sector, on the CAB and things like that. Unfortunately, of course, with funding the way it is, more and more of them are under pressure, going by the wayside. And of course, with COVID, the face-to-face stuff that advisors would usually do in meetings has obviously had to change. So it's either in phone calls, advice sessions, or this sort of thing, video calls. If clients have if clients have the phones, the technology, the sort of technical wherewithal to do it. Some clients, are of an age where they're just not technology savvy, so they might have a phone, but they might not know how to use the apps or Zoom or things like that. It can be a bit, let's face it, can be a bit of a pain in the what. So yeah, universal credit. So what I'm going to do is, got it all here. Never try and remember this stuff because it changes, you see. But yeah, my advice would be, go to one of these places if you can, if you really want to know A, what you can get, B, how to go about getting it, and C, of course, they can represent you. They can talk to the DWP, Department of Work and Pensions, that administers this stuff on your behalf, if you don't feel confident in doing that yourself, So, let's find the right thing. So, as it stands at the minute, universal credit rates 2020 to 21. If you are a single person, a single claimant, as I am at the moment, the standard allowance, so this is per month, okay, it's paid monthly. If you're under 25, it's £342.72. This is, of course, before any deductions. If you owe from a previous, like a budgeting loan or something like that, or discretionary loan from the last time you were on, you might be still paying that back this is before deductions. Okay, so single claimant under 25, £342.72. Single claimant 25 and over, £409.89. Joint claimants both under 25, £488.59, and joint claimants either or both 25 and over, £594.04. Now, what's important to remember is, at the moment, since April, as part of the sort of government's sort of emergency spending review plan at the time to deal with, well, supposedly to deal with the fallout of COVID, the Tories, or Tory Chancellor Sunak, was sort of persuaded to increase the universal credit claimant allowance, I think, by, so the standards or single person allowance, by about 20 quid a week. This is why you're hearing this stuff, if you've seen it in the news, from Johnson and all that, about how they've increased it by £1,000 a year, basically. So 20 quid a week, if you're claiming it for a year, works out about £1,000. So I think it's 20 a week, is it? Is it 20 a month? Hang on. I think it's, hang on, well, we'll come to that now, actually. So that's the basic rates there. So it's a top up, basically, at 20. So moving on to that topic, the latest news I've been able to find, which is as of the 25th of November, is the latest thing I've been able to find from the government about this. This is on the ITV News website. So this was a government, what is he? Chief Secretary to the Treasury. So he's a Conservative MP who's Chief Secretary to Treasury. And he was saying on one of the TV programmes, political ones on ITV, on the 25th of November, that no decision to stop the £20 top-up to universal credit has been made, according to Steve Barclay, MP. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury says the matter will be reviewed despite speculation that the extra money will be stopped after it was not budgeted for in the Chancellor's spending review. That's right, so when it wasn't budgeted for, it was sort of pressure put on him to do it. Thankfully, it worked for, up until now and into the new year. We don't. The point is, we don't know how much longer that's going to continue. So bear in mind, if you do claim before Christmas, after Christmas, in the new year, there's a chance it can just stop. So you'll be 20 quid, let's see, so what will be, you'd be 20 quid a week worse off, I think, basically, from what I was saying. So we don't know when or if they're going to stop it. I mean, they're probably a bit like the furlough scheme thing. If they're going to stop it, because they probably want to, because it's it's money being spent and being spent on not usually the sorts of people that Tories or Labour, to be honest with you, would want to spend it on these days. So bear that in mind. That can change. There's a lot of pressure being put on by welfare charities, homelessness charities, etc., on the government to continue the £20 extra per week. It is per week, yes. Whether that will bear fruit, I don't know. I think people are assuming it's going to be about, because it was April when it was brought in this year, and obviously the financial year is April to April, so people are assuming that when they come out next April 2021, with their spending plans, they could scrap it. So you have to bear that in mind. That could happen. You could go down 20 quid a week after next April, which would take you down to, I think it's about 90 quid a week at the minute, with it round about single person claimant, standard claimant over 25, so it'll go down to about what it used to be on job seekers, and before, which was about 70 quid, 74 was it, something like that, I think, from memory. I've been on that as well in the past, so I know from memory it's about 74. So how do you go and claim it if you've never claimed it before? First of all, it's all online now, whereas once you sort of pop into your job centre and ask them to help you and ask for you'd actually fill out a paper form and everything, not anymore. It's all online on your computer, on your phone, you know, whatever. I'd do it on a PC personally if it was me. Well, I have done recently, that too. So it takes about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to half an hour to fill out the actual sort of basic information about yourself, and that be on you'll find that on the government's .gov website. Basically, just type into Google claim universal credit or whatever, or universal credit, and you'll find a link on your Google search about, you know, where to go into, and then there'll be information about it on the .gov website, and one of them there will say how to claim, how to make a claim, and just follow that basically. You will need an email address, because it needs an email address, or their system needs an email address, because you will be sent, or you have to log in to each time. Once you're sort of signed on to you have to log into your claimant account basically, and it uses the email that you provide to do that. And obviously you get sent certain information, like there's a login code sometimes it sends, like there's an extra security thing and all of that. They might send you messages, your work coach, which is what they're called. The person you're assigned might send you a message about something, what they need you to do or want you to do. Want you to log into your account and do something on there by a certain time, because this is another thing with universal credit. Sometimes you're sent tasks to do, particularly at the beginning, to do by a certain time and date. You know, housekeeping basically. That's one of the areas where you have to be careful, because if you don't manage to do what they've asked you to do by a certain time and date, probably the first time, if you're lucky, they'll sort of, you know, because you didn't see it or something, they'll sort of give you a sort of a bit of a, you know, you should be looking at your thing, please don't do it again, sort of, don't let it slip again. If you're a bit of a serial offender, that's when they're probably going to start talking about sanctioning part of your money, which means stopping part of your, you know, a certain amount of your money per month until you sort of comply with what they want you to do, or what they're asking you to do. So yeah, it's all online. He give you sort of details you expect, set up security stuff. Now, in my experience, and I know from people that I've met and spoken to personally, who've had to do it as well, with universal credit, is the second part of you sort of claiming. You set up your account online, and then you go straight into ID verification, trying to verify who you are, who you say you are. Online for me, even though I've got a passport number, all this sort of stuff, it never ever works. It never works. Now, usually, and I think for a lot of people it just doesn't work, because it goes on your credit history. If you haven't got a credit history, it's not going to help. If you haven't got a passport, obviously, even though I have, if you haven't got a passport or the photo ID like a driver's license, which got a lot of people signing on might tend not to have, you're sort of stuffed really trying to prove that online to the satisfaction of this sort of the software they're using. So usually what would happen if it wasn't the pandemic is you would pop along to your job centre and say, I'm sorry, I've tried to prove who I say I am, and the system's not having it, you know. And they'd sort of make an appointment there, you'd sit down with one of your advisors, and they'd sort of verify your identity there, you know. because it's the pandemic, because certainly where I am, I don't know about where you are, the job centre isn't open to physically go into. Everything's being done on the phone at the moment. So I've just gone back onto Universal Credit, I think just ended last month. Waiting for my first payment now. So what happened was I started my claim online, and then I got a phone call, I think, from one of the work coaches working from home, I'm assuming, to verify my ID, basically, which didn't take long. Wasn't a big problem. They ask you your security questions that you've just set up on the account. Sort of run through a sort of a sheet, a sort of checklist of questions they need to ask you, basically. And that was done and dusted, really. And then what happens is, because what would usually happen then is, between setting it all up, proving who you are, and getting your payment, for that month, the month ahead, a date sort of a month ahead, 4 weeks ahead, you would have usually been made an appointment for you to go into the job centre to have your first review meeting, basically, your initial meeting with your job coach. Obviously, again, that's being done on the phone. So I've had my initial one, where basically you agree to, and this is important, you agree to the terms of your claimant commitment. Because what you're doing is, after you set it all up, the accountability, your first sort of meeting with your work coach is to set up your claimant commitment. Now, you do write it as part of your setting up your account. You're asked to write in, one of the things you have to do by a certain date and time, write in 3 types of jobs that you're looking for, areas of work. Upload your CV that you've got, for your job coach to look at, and then sign up to the claimant commitment. Now, the claimant commitment specifies, and this is in the sort of the relevant legislation, basically passed by the Tories, quite some years ago. It'll specifically say this when you'll see this when you're sort of signing up to it. Specifically requires you to agree that you will undertake, I don't know if it's up to, I don't know what the word exactly is, up to or 35 hours per week. Not job search, but to look for work, basically. So you're supposed to be able to sort of, in some way, prove or show to your work coach each month when you have the review that you're spending that sort of time a week looking for work. Now, if you're talking about job search, purely job search, which of course again is done almost entirely on online, with online job boards like Indeed, CV Library, going blank here. I always go blank. There's many others, which I usually can remember, but of course I've started a video, so I can't remember anything now. And obviously there's graduate ones as well, but obviously there's also, depends what your sort of your work experience is, or your qualifications are, so what sort of thing you're looking for, really. Obviously there's agencies that you can sign up to. You're going to find it very difficult, I'd say almost impossible, to meet that criteria each and every week just searching for relevant work on online job boards, primarily because, and I must say this, there's also a requirement that, which is part of your claimant commitment, that you agree to travel a maximum, I think it is, of 90 minutes to any job, so an hour and a half travel one way to that job. So I don't know what that be in miles, really. I should have worked that out. But when I used to go to a what do they call it? A sort of private sort of company that the government paid to sort of help us skill up. Never happened. I think it was A4E or something like that, or Capita or something like that. And they used to have a big board with a map, and then they'd drawn a great big circle basically around the town that they decided was 90 minutes worth of travel on public transport. So it's sort of a certain mileage, you know. Anyway, so that's part of it. So you're looking for work, you're looking for job searching on these sites. For work, that's at least, you know, to meet the claimant commitment, 90 minutes travel from where you live. If you're like me, entirely dependent on public transport, because I don't drive, I've never had the means to learn to drive. So for me, it's either, if I want to go somewhere, I've either got to be able to walk there and back, or catch the bus or train there and back if I've got the money. So you're looking for work each week that's within that, you know, within that travel period, within that travel area for public transport, or if you are driving, obviously that frees you up a little bit more. Now, at the rate jobs come up, new jobs, new positions on these boards. So say I'm saying I'm typing in, I'm looking for jobs within 25 miles radius of my town where I live, because I know I can probably get there on the public transport in the morning before 9 o'clock, just about. It's probably the maximum, you know, because obviously public transport, trains break down, buses break, you know, it happens, especially in the winter. But to be safe, let's say 20-25 miles from where I am. And then obviously the jobs that come up each day, there's going to be a certain amount. There aren't going to be that many. Unless you live in a big city or near a big city, there's not going to be a load of new jobs each day, you know? So you're going to struggle to meet that 35 hours. So you need, I mean, if you live in a city, great, but you need to have other things you're doing as well. So you need to keep updating your CV, you need to think about your skills, updating your skills on your social media sort of stuff. If you're on LinkedIn, that's great. You know, so you can put in that you're on your notes, on your work search notes and things, on your account, which you have to keep doing, so that your coach can see that, so you can see what you're doing to secure work. That, you know, you've created your LinkedIn profile, you've updated your LinkedIn profile, you've created a new CV or a couple of different CVs for different types of roles, you know. Things like you've been networking with you know, you've spoken to friends and family to network and try and find out what's going on, jobs that they they might know about. If you're training, if you're undertaking any training to try and directly or indirectly up your chances of getting a job, put that down. How many hours are you doing this? Where you're doing it? Things like that. So it's not just pure jobs, because the chances of you meeting that criteria just doing that, as I say, unless you live in sort of in or around London or Manchester or Liverpool or a bigger city, it's not going to happen. My own personal opinion, the 35-hour stipulation is in there and was put in there by the infamous Ian Duncan Smith when he was in charge of work and pensions at the time, I think under Cameron, has been put in there to trip people up, you know, for that fact. I mean, they know, you know, damn well that you know, this 35-hour thing, for the reasons I've just mentioned, is going to be almost impossible to prove for most people claiming. Certainly after, you know, months of trying to sort of look for work, even if you're doing your best, you really are doing your best, unless you live in a city where there's an abundance of work to look for, you know, you're going to have to do other things. to try and meet it. So that's stress in itself. That's a lot of stress in itself for a lot of people. Then, of course, if you're like me and you're thinking, okay, I'm on universal credit, I'm getting universal credit, but I've got a temporary health problem, temporary sort of, well, I've got a disability which I can work, I want to work, but I need assistance, I need more help financially, getting to work, getting about physically. There's obviously something called PIP, which is Personal Independence Payment. You can apply for that while you're claiming universal credit. That's perfectly allowed. Obviously, I've got a bit of a heart problem at the minute, which means the whole point of it is it prohibits me from walking, really. So I can't do any sort of distance at all, and I can't do anything. I can't walk quickly. I mean, it's just like I'm like a 80-year-old man until it gets sort of fixed at the hospital. I don't know when that will be. So for now, I'm on universal credit. Yes, I'm actively looking for work and seeking work, but I could only take work at the minute that's sort of desk-based, nothing too physical, nothing that would need a lot of walking, or distance or speed or anything like that. So I'm applying. So I've been applying for PIP since I don't know, March or something. I mean, it's gone on forever and ever and ever. I've had to go through the whole rigmarole of me applying, then the DWP saying, no, we don't think you meet the criteria, then me having a mandatory reconsideration, then looking at that, then knocking that back, then the whole game. So it was all a game to try and deter you from carrying on, basically, with it. I've now finally 6 months on from starting it, then get a chance to go to appeal at the appeals tribunal, and that was months ago, and now I've been told that I've got a date for the beginning of the year. I only found that out last week, actually, the week just gone. Now, because today is the Saturday before Christmas 2020, so you can claim for PIP. It can be, and unfortunately tends to be, a sort of a long drawn out, horrible game where, and it shouldn't be, where you tell them what's wrong with you, why you need it, and they just say sod off. Even if you've got doctors' evidence manual, sod off, don't believe you're not getting it. So you have to go through all this stuff, mandatory reconsideration, then wait for your appeal thing, then wait for an appeal date, with the court and everything like that. So what would usually happen is you go to your appeal date, hopefully with a representative from CAB or something like that, or welfare charity that's near you, should have an appeals advisor. They'll be very, very busy because they'll probably be inundated with appeals. Thankfully, most appeals are overturned at PIP and ESA appeals at tribunal, which begs the question, of course, if most appeals are overturned and therefore people are given the PIP and ESA at tribunal, what the hell will the DWP playing at for months? Of course, that's why I got my opinion about it. It's just to try and deter you and put you off, basically, when you're sick, which is awful, which is the worst thing, because you're talking about sick people, and often sick people who are trying to work and trying to do what they should be doing. This is to try and help you live a normal daily life and continue in work, rather than claim ESA, Employment Support Allowance, which is a long-term thing where you're saying basically I can't work for at least 12 months, or I can't work at all, basically, the sick, as people are supposed to say. So it's disgusting. It doesn't work. The PIP appeal, the whole sort of system rigmarole to get to before you get to appeal, just doesn't work. It's a complete, pardon my French, piss take. Enormously stressful for people. I'm lucky because, as I say, I've had the training. I've been an advisor. I know how. But it's still. I got pissed off. Still got me angry because I thought, why are you making me jump through these hoops for no reason at all? And by the time, if I get it at appeal, finally, you're talking about the best part of a year. I've had to go through all this bloody nonsense if I get it. And you're not talking about, it's not going to make it, it's going to help, basically help me, which is the whole point of it, help me, if I can find a job soon, get to that job more reliably. I can afford to pay for a taxi, or I can afford to pay for the train, or I can, because 90 quid a week, bills, food, travel if you need to travel to work there, ain't bloody much, is it? And that's with the 20 quid extra. Ain't bloody much. I mean, let's not forget, this is one of the most expensive countries in the world to live in. A first world country. One of the richest countries in the world. Yet, people on universal credit, people on ESA get a little bit more, but not much. You're expected to live on sort of 90, if you're lucky, could go down to 70 again, quid a week in said expensive, rich country, I know there's an old adage people say, I'd like to see any of these bleeding MPs try and make it week after week, month after month, on 90 quid a week, 70 quid a week. Wouldn't happen, would it? Would not happen. There's some MPs that have had to do that have, been elected. Most of them haven't got a sodding clue. If you think, and I'm not talking about Tories, the Tory cabinet, those in government, do you know how many of them are multimillionaires? They have no clue. They've grown up as millionaires, many of them. They've been millionaires most of their lives, many of them. They haven't got a clue what the real world is like to live in. So if you think they've got a first idea, or even care, frankly, what you've had to go through, A, to get universal credit, B, to get PIP, C, to try and live on 90 to 70 quid a week, whatever they decide to give you in the end, well, they're living on bloody millions and millions and millions a year. That's why that's one of the biggest reasons why, there's so many poor people. That's why there's food banks. That's why there's poor kids needing free school meals, going hungry. That's why there's old age poverty, all rising hand over fist, constantly getting bigger and bigger, more and more people thrown onto it. You won't see that on the news because we don't want to talk about that. Because of course the people that deliver the news are in the same little London-centric SW1 bubble. Very rich people, very privileged people, that many of these MPs are, and ministers. It's not me having a rant. These are facts. You know it. They don't live where you live, living what you're having to live on, or try to live on, and raise your kids on. Of course they bloody don't. If they did, if they actually knew, if they actually cared, you wouldn't have to do it on 70 quid a week, 90 quid a week. You wouldn't have to do it in an old age pension, state pension. You wouldn't have to spend a year going through absolute bloody nonsense trying to get PIP or ESA. Wouldn't happen. And I'm telling you this as me, and I'm telling you this as a community councillor, because I've seen it time and time again. Not only for people, not only for me and my family, but for my residents, for clients I've seen as an advisor. Just so many times. So many people I've tried to help and had to help since stopping being an advisor, with the skills I learnt to help them try and apply for universal credit, PIP, ESA. I can't tell you. I've lost count. With bugger all help from the Department of Work and Pensions. Bugger all. I mean, the opposite, frankly. And these rules are set. That you have to go through mandatory reconsideration. You have to wait all this time. These rules are set by the government of the day. Now, excuse me, that's the Tories at the moment. They're all very rich and privileged. The ones in power in government that set these things. Mr. Sunak, our Chancellor, before he became an MP and a Chancellor, he worked for Goldman Sachs. I mean, they're the people that literally run the world, the company. money, billions and billions, money, 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 you know. It was literally run most governments in the world. What they say goes, that they're the money. That's where he's from. Lateral move from there straight into government. So he only knows about, and of course he's a millionaire, he only knows about millionaires. He only hangs around millionaires. He's married to someone even richer than him, I believe. Some extremely rich family. He's also one of the people that totally and utterly believes in, as far as I know, believes in herd immunity. Herd immunity. Well, who dies from herd immunity? Not bloody him. Not bloody millionaires. Not his bloody mates. Not his bloody family. You know? Poor sods like you. That's who die. Old people who haven't got millions for private healthcare. They don't live in lovely big massive mansions in the middle of, you know, Norfolk or somewhere. You know? Or Colchester or Gloucester. You know? Or Bloomsbury or something. So I'm having a bit of rant, aren't I? But I think it's justified. Coming up to Christmas, and they're deciding whether or not we can have 20 quid a week extra or not. going into this year. 20 quid a week. 20 quid a week. Well, I mean, what was it a month ago? Johnson suddenly, while he's hiding away in his self-isolating, when he's already had COVID, no one ever got to the bottom of that, what the hell that was all about, while he's in his number 10 bunker, out the blue, is putting out these weird sort of Kim Jong-un, weird sort of North Korean videos. He seems to have made himself on his phone. Telling us about, in the middle of a pandemic, all this going on, you know, no one, you know, what was it? I'm announcing a UK RAF Space Force and rockets. An RAF Space Force rocket we're going to launch from Scotland. What the? And we're going to basically spend 64 billion quid? Which apparently they've found 64 billion quid like that out the blue. No one knew what the hell they were talking about. I mean, what any of this had to do with anything that's going on for normal people like us? COVID, their terrible response to it, the horrific death stats in this country, which are the worst in Europe. But he's talking about space rockets and 60 billion quid that him and Sunak have found. You know, when we're being told there's no money to spend on. And at almost the next day, it was the next day, we were told that public sector workers, what was it? They couldn't, in all good conscience. This is Sunak, wasn't it? He couldn't, in all good conscience, give public sector workers, frontline workers, a pay rise. When the day before they just told us they're going to magic up 60. Was it more than that? 60 billion quid, or something more than that. I think sure it was more than that, to buy aircraft carriers, to buy space rockets, and all this insane crap. But you can't have 20 quid past next April. Your kids can't get free school meals during the summertime. This is the insanity we are living in. The insanity you have to live in, I have to live in. We have to try and apparently find jobs in and work in. The UK it has become a basket case because the people that lead us, the people in charge, live in a millionaire's fantasy where they don't have to worry about the things we have to worry about. They don't have to think about the things we have to think about. And if you think they give a flying you-know-what about you or me, you're out of your mind. I'm telling you now, because I've been around them. I've been a community councillor now for nearly 4 years. And my experience so far at all the different levels is that not all, but the vast majority of politicians, whether they're local councillors, MPs, ministers, Labour, all the Tories, couldn't give a flying you know what about you, your families or anything else. All they care about is consolidating their own power and making sure they're elected again the next time. They will say and do almost anything to get elected next time, because of their egos, because of the bunts, considerable bunts, because of the perks, considerable perks. You have no idea. I'm on the rung of local representation at community council level, where yes, I have to be elected, but it's voluntary. I don't get paid. So I've not entered the first rung of all that starts at county council level. That's where it all sort of starts. Believe me, I could the 4 years, I could tell you stuff you would not believe. One day I will. One day I will. One day I'm going to write a book just about things I've heard, experienced, seen, and just at the local level, let alone beyond that. But I'm telling you, most of you haven't got a clue about the stuff that goes on. Maybe that's for the best, to be honest, for your sake. But believe me, it's been a 4-year rolling shock and eye-opener for me. I thought naively when I started that the whole point was to try and represent your community, those hardest hit, those struggling the most. That was the whole point, I thought. How naive was I? How naive was I? What it's mostly about is ego, money, power, ego, and ego. As I say. Anyway, I've digressed a bit there, haven't I? I hope that's been helpful about how to claim. Like I say, my number one tip, my number one piece of advice would be, if you don't know what to do, if you're unsure, if you don't know, or you want to find out just what you're entitled to, if someone in your family is losing their job, unfortunately, has lost their job, or things have changed, working out, or one of your children's got older now, reached the age of sort of college age and things like that. So, you're not getting the child benefit things that you were getting. Seek out your CAB, seek out your welfare advice charity, or something like that, which you'll be able to find locally on Google, probably, and ask for a benefits calculation. So they'll ask you about your circumstances, and they'll tell you what benefits you can probably claim for, how much how much they would be theoretically if you got them. So like I say, universal credit, you can claim if you're got the physical problems that hold you back from travelling and doing things you need to do physically. You can apply for PIP. If you're caring for someone, you can apply for carer's allowance. There's all sorts of bits, top up bits you can apply for. And don't forget, if you're suddenly claiming universal credit and you're having to rent, so you need housing benefit as well. Many people's housing benefit monthly benefit does not cover their rent, so they're having to dip in to their universal credit, which is supposed to pay for your food, your bills, all that sort of stuff, your travel. They're having to dip into that to top up their weekly rent, despite getting housing benefit. Yeah, if you can find out these little extra bits that maybe you can get from your local welfare charity, that can really help. It can mean a big difference. 20 quid extra a week can really mean, literally can really mean, difference between being above the breadline or below it. Really. Again, something I don't think a lot of politicians at local level or national level understand, because they don't have to, do they? Don't need to. So anyway, it's bye from me. It's bye from him. A Merry Christmas from me. I think this is the last video I'm going to put up on my channel before Christmas. So, Merry Christmas to you. Good luck to you. I really wish you a Happy New Year and a Merry Christmas. I know it's going to be tough, a tough struggle for lots of you, lots of us, for many reasons. Not just the money, but obviously COVID and talk of more lockdown and restrictions again and all of that. But I've said it before, I'll say it again. Don't let the bastards grind you down. Take care.